Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you may be joining us from. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for our second Spida Coffee Corner. We are thrilled to have the opportunity today to highlight our software solutions for you and explore how Spida solutions can be used for managing overhead utility asset data and activities. My name is Amber Schmiesing. I am the Services Manager at Bentley for the Spida products. And we also have joining us today on the call, Nicole Chandler. Nicole is a Senior Consultant also on our Services team. Before we dive in here today, just want to go over a few housekeeping notes. The On24 platform that we are using today includes several windows, as you may have already noticed. These are all resizable, movable, so feel free to play around with those. You will be able to utilize closed captioning and submit questions to be answered at the end of the presentation. If you accidentally close one of your windows, you can simply click on the appropriate icon listed here on the slide to reopen it. Many of our other Bentley products and teams also offer coffee corners. If you see some of those on the slide that you might want to attend, you can always visit the link at the bottom of the slide here. This will provide a search for all of our upcoming Coffee Corner offerings. Let's go ahead and dive into today's presentation. Today, we're going to be reviewing a combination of how Spida Calc and Spida Studio interact or integrate and the value that this brings for many areas of an organization, from engineering to joint use and asset management teams. I see that there are a lot of Spida Calc users on the call here today. So we'll spend just a few minutes covering how the addition of Spida Studio can make your poll design and analysis more efficient and provide greater visibility into the health of your system as a whole, and also for initiatives such as system hardening, for example. Finally, in the presentation today, we will only get to show a small preview into the functionality and use cases that our solutions satisfy. But Spida Studio is used by electric utilities, communication companies, as well as contractors. And our flexible, configurable workflows provide our users with the ability to streamline any processes involving their overhead assets and give users a platform to access their projects in real time for critical insights, reporting, streamlined communication, and really overall trust as the single source of truth. All right, I just have one more slide after this, and then we'll dive into the fun stuff. But as I mentioned, I see there's a lot of Spida Calc users on the call today. So I think for the most part, we have a general idea of what Spida Calc is. It's a desktop application. It performs all of your overhead pole design, pole loading, clearance evaluations. But what is Spida Studio, right? And what can Spida Studio do for me? So I won't go through word for word. I know this is a rather wordy site or slide, but in general, again, Spida Studio is a workflow management and data storage software. Manages the physical health and the activities occurring on overhead systems. And we offer Spida Studio in 3 different tiers. So this is not a sales presentation, but I want everyone to understand the difference in the functionality of Studio based on your company or your organization's needs. So for all of my Spida Calc users, Design Manager is a very simple implementation with big benefits. Think about for a second all of the Spida Calc files that your organization creates each day, week, month, or year. And for most, based on our experience in talking with users, the Spida Calc project files after completion are saved to a network drive or maybe saved to a desktop or locally. And there's likely some naming convention to how the files are saved, but without having to dig through old documentation or each file individually, do you know what locations are in those projects? If you needed to pull a new project together using existing pole loading data, would you be able to do that quickly and efficiently, or would it take some time to do? And when you have the latest pole loads, how do you know it's actually the latest and greatest design? Right? Something else to think about with all of your Spida Calc projects, there's a lot of data, pole attributes, pole locations, attachment data, analysis results, right? All kinds of data. And that's sitting in each of those files. Now imagine if you were able to aggregate and report on all of that data and easily find the latest and greatest design for each of your pole locations. With Spida Studio Design Manager acting as a central repository for your SpidaCalc data, all of that is possible, and we're going to show that here very soon. As we move to the right along this slide, Spida Studio Process Manager has all of the capabilities of Design Manager, as well as giving the benefits of workflow creation, which can help your organization to manage, track, and really facilitate any process. Some common workflows that our users have created are pole attachment requests, terminations, make-ready and transfers, pole inspections, and a whole lot more. Using Spida Studio and defining your workflows in our application gives organizations a central place for complex projects, such as those that I mentioned previously, to collect critical data points, information, files, automate email notifications, track timelines, define escalation paths, integrate with an existing GIS service, and a whole lot more. We're going to walk through a project here very soon, and we're going to touch on many of those features. Finally, Spida Studio Enterprise. Enterprise includes all of the capabilities that I've mentioned in Design Manager and Process Manager, but it also includes a level of integrations, such as integrations with other enterprise systems, for example, a two-way integration with GIS, an integration with your work management application, or other, like I mentioned, other enterprise systems. All right, so now that we have had a chance to level set and provide this brief overview, let me set the stage here for today's demo. We are going to start the presentation today in Spida Studio. We are going to leverage our Process Manager to create a pole attachment request project. And then we're going to, as we walk through the process that's defined within Spida Studio, we're also going to pull in the pole loading requirements that we'll have for make-ready engineering. Okay, so we'll leverage existing designs in Design Manager, and we'll be able to quickly and efficiently create our project for that portion of the process. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. I am going to start the presentation here in the products today in Spida Studio. And what you see on the screen is one of our demo instances. I'm currently logged in as my user, Bob's Cable. This is the attacher representative that we're going to use today for our presentation. And Bob's Cable is actually going to be accessing Acme Power Company's assets within Spida Studio, meaning they're going to visualize the poles from Acme Power's GIS service in the map view, and they're going to be able to initiate an application to send to Acme Power Company. Now, when I'm logged in, I first will be presented with the dashboard. The dashboard is my high-level view of all of my projects grouped in various tables. So as my Bob's Cable user, I can see the new projects that I've created. I can see recent status changes of my projects and the statuses that those projects are currently in. I can also see a status age table showing me which projects have been sitting the longest and which ones may require my attention. And finally, I can see my projects due. Any projects that appear in this table are going to have either a little red asterisk or potentially a yellow flag, indicating that I have a due date approaching, a due date that's been set as part of the workflow. From the dashboard tables, you can select on any one of these projects to take you directly to the manager page, which is where all project interactions, where new projects are created, will occur. So if I select on one of these projects here, my manager page will load as well as the project that I've selected so that I can work the project from there. Today, we're actually going to start a brand new project and show the process from end to end. So I'm going to start by clearing my sidebar so that I don't have any projects loaded. And then I'm going to navigate back over to the map view. And as I mentioned, the map view is consuming the assets from the Acme Power Asset Service, which could be a GIS service or any WFS feature service that can be authenticated to from Spida Studio. I can, as Bob's Cable, come in and double click on a pole to view more information about that pole and make sure that I have the correct poles selected to incorporate into my new project. And pan through the map view to load more poles in various areas and locations, or I can search a GPS coordinate or station, which we refer to as a pole in Spida Studio here in my search bar. So I've found the pole, one of the poles that I'm looking for. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so that I can see the additional poles in this area. And I am going to select each of the poles that I want to include in my project, or I can also change my selection to a polygon, for example, and multi-select poles by drawing a polygon around those poles. I have 6 stations or 6 poles selected, and these are the poles that I'm going to include in my project. Now, what's a project? A project is a series of events that collect various informations through forms in Spida Studio, can collect file attachments, important information using our @remarks. We can include pole loading, and we're going to describe all of that here today in the presentation. The project that we are going to initiate is called New Attachment Request. These are all back-end workflows that Bob's Cable has access to and can initiate a project. So anything from work notifications to new attachment requests to advanced route reviews, these are all possible workflow configurations that can be built by a Spida Studio owner and used to drive various processes within our application. So for today, we are going to pretend that Bob's Cable is initiating an attachment application to Acme Power. I'm going to use the selected stations to include in my project, and I'm going to fill out this brief new attachment application form. Acme Power has decided that this is the information that's important to collect, or one of the pieces of information important to collect from the attacher representative. So we'll fill out our information. We'll call it Coffee Corner App with today's date for simplicity. We'll select today's date. Our attaching company is listed here in the dropdown. I'll put in my name, my email, a phone number, and then any details about this application. And then I will create my project. The project was created successfully. It's loaded in my sidebar, and now I can view the details of my project here in the detail view. From here, I can view what forms are required by Acme Power in order to advance my status forward. I'm going to select this locations icon here, or stations icon with the red asterisk. This is indicating that there's something that requires my attention, which appears to be a series of forms for each pole in my project. Here are the 6 poles, and here are 6 required forms. We can view the forms here in the detail view one by one and edit them. You can see that the proposed attachment details are what is required here. So I need to indicate the attachment type, bundle size, stringing tension, attachment height, and equipment in order for my project to process or proceed forward. Now, going one by one, you can imagine with a project that had 50 poles, this might be a little time consuming. So we do have a table view, and I will navigate there now, where these forms can be viewed and they can be edited. So using my table view, I'm going to scroll here to the right, and here are those required fields that I must complete in order for my project to advance forward. I'm going to edit my forms. And here I can simply use the Edit All row to complete each form or form field for all of the poles with one click. And then if I needed to make modifications one by one, I could do that as well. I am actually going to filter this primary tag so that I have my poles in the order that I want them in. My proposed attachment bundle size is going to be a medium 2-inch cable TV fiber. These drop downs are all configurable by Acme Power. So whatever they wish to choose were put in these drop downs is definitely a configurable function. Okay, we'll put in our stringing tension, we'll put in our attachment height. We'll just say most of these are going to be 26 feet 6 inches. And then we can go through and kind of modify, right? They might not all be the same at each pole. So we can indicate where those differences are. Maybe this one is at 26. This one could be at 27. Obviously, the attacher would know this going into it and wouldn't just guess. But for our hypothetical scenario here, we've got all of those attachment heights in. And then finally, is there any equipment? So maybe for most of them, the response here is NA, right? But we can choose, let's just say for this one here, we'll do an anchor and down guy. There's a dead end here. And then for the last one, we'll do the same. Choose down guy and anchor. And that's it. Once we have all of our required fields satisfied, we can click the green check mark, save our forms, and then we can come back on over to the detail view where we also see that the red asterisks are gone, no more required fields. And now we can follow the process here with the status dropdown. We want to submit our application. And what this is going to do is this is going to, once confirmed, advance the project to assign a representative from Acme Power. At this time, the project is now in submission under review. What this means is the project has transitioned from Bob's Cable into the hands of users at Acme Power. I can view the assignees on the project, and I see a joint use admin from Acme Power, as well as an Acme Power user, are now assigned to the project. What this means for Bob's Cable is that while I can view aspects of the project, for example, the new attachment application form that I originally completed, I can't edit it. I can only view. I can also come to my stations or my poles and view the information within the proposed attachment forms. However, again, I can't edit these forms at this point. This is all controlled by the backend workflow. I'm going to use a handy tool that I have under my admin permissions here in our demo environment, and I'm going to switch my user to an Acme Power user that's assigned to this project. As we transition to this user, the page will look a little bit different. The dashboard will contain projects that are assigned or that the joint use admin is a part of. I can see the project that I had just created as it falls under the new projects table in my dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and select this project so that I can review the project in the manager page. As the joint use admin, I can continue this new attachment request project by doing one of a couple things. I can review the next statuses, which are to send the project to make ready engineering or to return to the attacher, potentially if there were corrections that needed to be made to the project. I can view the form information, such as the project level form, but also the station level forms as well. In addition, if I needed to communicate with, in this case, Bob's Cable, I can come to the remarks, and I can @mention Bob's Cable, add any notes, and save. By @mentioning a user, this will send an automated email with the remark to Bob's Cable. For this demonstration here today, we're going to go ahead and proceed and send this project to make ready engineering. We'll confirm the status. And we'll see the toast message that the project has been updated successfully. One thing to point out here is what may have seemed like a simple status advancement on the front end is there was actually quite a bit of automation that happened on the back end. One thing is that we have added a make ready lead assignee to this project. This was configured within the workflow that we are using for this project. Again, this would have been crafted by folks at Acme Power based on their process. But an MRE lead is now assigned to the project along with my Acme Power user. In addition, we have, if I go to my logs, we've actually created a SpidaCalc file that is based on the 6 polls within my project. So we're going to show the integration here in just a moment of the Spida Studio and SpidaCalc capabilities. But at this point in the workflow, we can generate that SpidaCalc file so that poll loading, clearance evaluations, and other engineering related activities can be complete before the project moves forward. If you recall from the PowerPoint presentation earlier in the coffee corner, we had mentioned that Spida Studio can be used as a central repository for your SpidaCalc project files and designs. One thing to note here before we go into SpidaCalc is that for each of my polls, I can select the info icon and I can see if there has been SpidaCalc projects or SpidaCalc design data saved to Spida Studio in the past. And for this particular location here, and actually for all of the locations in my project today, that is the case. So I can see that there is an active design or a system of record design that somebody within my organization has saved to Spida Studio in the past. I can see that the analysis status of this poll is passing, and I can even view analysis results directly in Spida Studio. I can also see the design layer that is acting as my system of record here in Spida Studio, and the one that will be used as we bring in these latest and greatest designs or system of record designs into SpidaCalc. So rather than starting projects from the ground up or having to search through a network drive or somewhere locally on my computer for each of these polls, I can simply pull them from my Spida Studio repository and bring them into a SpidaCalc project. So let's go ahead and dive into SpidaCalc and see what that looks like.
Next, as the MRE lead for the utility, I will open the project from Studio through the SpidaCalc interface. I click on the down arrow, and you can see I have the application assigned to me. Once I click on it, it loads from Spida Studio, and I can click open. Next, I'm ready to clone my design layer into a theoretical layer since the existing layer already exists. And then on that theoretical layer, I'm going to add my communication wires. I'm going to add right in the map by selecting my first pole, holding Control, selecting the others. I'm going to go to Wires. We are using a Bob's cable wire communication bundle, and we're going to use a medium. For insulators, I'll use a 3-bolt clamp. Once I have that in my quick assembly, I can left click and drag into the map view. And I'm going to attach it at a straight height of 27 feet. And then I can go back through and alter those to the heights on the application. Next, I'll do the second direction. And I'm going to attach those at a height of 27 as well. Next, I need to change the heights of the attachments to the heights that are in our application. So I will click on each pole in order to change it to its height in the application. Okay, now each attachment is at the height that it is on the application, and I can go ahead and analyze the project. While the project is analyzing, you will see a countdown clock in the upper right-hand corner, letting you know how many poles are left to analyze. Now that my project has completed analysis, I can tab through my theoretical designs and see if there are any additional changes that are necessary. First pole looks good. Take a look at the second pole. This pole looks good. It's close to failing, but it's still passing. This pole looks pretty good, but we do have some numbers in the 90s, so I'm going to go ahead and this one is going to have a down guy added to it. So in order to do that, I'm going to create another layer named the recommended design. And on the recommended design layer, I'm going to add that down guy. Now I want the owner to be for Bob's Cable, since that is the company that I need to down guy. By hovering over the previous wire endpoint, I'm going to support the previous pole. And you can see my Bob's Cable down guy is added to my pole, and that will get reanalyzed once we continue looking through the rest of our designs. Number 124 looks pretty good. Go to number 127. It looks pretty good. And then we'll go to our analysis for pole 123, and we can see that this one also looks like it needs a down guy to back up Bob's Cable. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to switch to my design so I can add, and that since it's already in my quick assembly, I can go ahead and I'm going to support the next wire endpoint this time. And you can see that down guy is added to my design. Now let's go ahead and reanalyze. Once our designs are complete, we can go ahead and review any remaining issues. For instance, on pole 123, looks like we still have the pole failing at 102%. I'm going to go ahead and change the class of this pole. We'll go back to my design and go to the pole tab. And I'm going to go to a 45 class 2. Left click and drag. And now we can just reanalyze this one pole. After analysis is completed and all of our poles are passing, let's go ahead and check our profile view to verify that clearances have been met. So I will start from the top. So you can see we have this red triangle with the exclamation point. I can go ahead and open this up to see what our violation is. I'll go ahead and select the issue, and it will open up and tell me a little bit more about what's going on. So it looks like Acme Power and Bob's Cable have an issue at the pole. The rule is that is being violated is neutral to communication. It's required to have 3'4", and we only have 3 feet. We need to raise our neutral or lower our communication. In this case, I'm going to choose to lower our communication by 6 inches. And you can see that goes ahead and clears the violation on this pole. We will need to reanalyze, but let's go ahead and check to make sure we don't have any additional violations to fix before analyzing. Looks like we have another violation here. Now this is a violation going across water. So you can see we have the above ground communication to water without sailboats. We need to have 14 feet, and we actually have 12 foot 3 inches. With the issue on this pole, it looks like we're probably going to need to raise on either side of the water in order to clear this violation without creating an additional violation. So what I'll do is go ahead and click on my 3-bolt clamp. I'll go ahead and raise that to a height of 29 foot 6. And you can see I'm still a bit in violation, so I will need to raise on the other pole. In order to do that, I can select the wire endpoint representing that pole and switch over to the pole through the component properties panel. Once there, go ahead and select the communication on that side, and we're going to go ahead and raise that communication 2 feet. And you can see that goes ahead and clears up our violation at that pole. Last but not least, we'll click on the final pole. We have one more violation here. This one, if I expand our clearances section, we can see that it is a above ground clearance issue, and it is communication to the parallel street. We need 15 foot 6 inches, and we currently have 12 foot 8. So we need to go ahead and raise our communication, collapse this a bit so we can work on our pole. I'll select the insulator on my active pole, and I'm going to raise this 25 foot. And it looks like I will also need to raise on the other pole. Again, I can do so by selecting the wire endpoint that represents that pole and switching to pole 124 in the component properties panel. Once I have that pole set as my active pole, I can go ahead and I'm going to raise this about 6 inches. Now by raising that, I did create another issue in between my telephone and Bob's cable. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to raise both the Bob's cable and the Janet's telephone. So we'll go ahead and raise to a height of 28 foot 6. And then I'm going to click on my lower, which is Janet's telco, and I'll raise that up 1 foot and 8 inches in order to clear the violation for that pole. Now I will go ahead and reanalyze all of my poles. Next, with our analysis complete, we can take a look and we see that our poles are not passing. We may need to add an additional guy to this pole in order to back up our tap going across the water. To do so, I'll go back to my design and I'll choose my guy wire. It is Bob's cable that I want to back up, so I'm going to left click and drag it up to my top view and hover over my other wire endpoint to create that down guy. I'm going to move the anchor in just to about 13 feet, and then I'm going to go ahead and reanalyze this pole only. Once our analysis is complete, we can see that all poles now are passing, and we're ready for our next step in the process. For our next step, we'll be filling out the forms for these poles by putting in their make ready information. I've filled out a lot of them just to save time on the video, but how I did that was I went to comparison view in the side dock. This gives me a compare between both the existing, and then I can set my final to the recommended design, which is my final design that I'm going to turn in. Now down here at the bottom, we have our remedy statement. So I can go ahead and just copy this, and then I can go ahead and put it into the forms. So I'm going to click on the location properties, the last icon in the side dock, and we're going to go over to the Forms tab. This is a form that's going to get brought back into Spida Studio. So I'm going to set the MRE to approved. I'm going to add the comments that I just copied from the compare panel. And I'll go ahead and say that make ready is required on this poll because we do need Janet's telco needs to move their attachment. Okay, once that's filled out, I can go ahead and click on the red X in the upper right-hand corner, and then I'm ready to bring this back up to Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Save Project to Spida Studio. And it's going to ask me, would you like to create a new project or update an existing? I'm going to update an existing project. Go ahead and select OK. And we're going to go ahead and advance our status to MRE review complete. And I can go ahead and click update project. Now it goes ahead and saves this project up to Spida Studio. And I'll hand it off to Amber to go over the remaining steps for this project.
Great, thank you, Nicole, for that demonstration in SpidaCalc and showing us the integration capabilities, bringing in your existing design that had already been pull loaded at some time in the past by another user and using that as your starting point. At the end of Nicole's demo, she showed that she saved the project file from SpidaCalc back up to Spida Studio. And I want to share here a couple items that have been carried over into Spida Studio for my joint use admin to review. I'm going to select the stations icon, and we're going to look at the PL124, which is the location that Nicole shared in her presentation as she was adding in the location form details. And you can see here the make ready statement that Nicole copied and pasted at the end of her presentation was brought over through workflow automation into this proposed attachment detail form for this particular location. The others have also carried over. We can share that here. So any of those form details that Nicole added as part of her project file have been brought over. In addition, what we'll see is if we look at the information for this poll, I can go to my project history tab, and I can see through the integration with SpidaCalc that this project does have a SpidaCalc file associated with it, and I can see some of the high-level details of that poll loading file. Here is my recommended design. I can see the design is passing. I can see the source project, where this design came from, the client file that was used, and the date that it was last modified. I can see some of the poll attributes, and then what's really helpful here are the analysis results that I can view right in Spida Studio. So I can work as the joint use admin in a platform that I'm comfortable in, and Nicole could work in a platform with SpidaCalc that she is comfortable in. She advanced her Spida Studio project status directly from SpidaCalc and really never had to leave the application. All right, so let's go ahead and move our project forward in Studio. My new attachment request project is now in a status of make ready construction cost estimate prep. The status is just a configurable name defined within the workflow, and we have a required form field that the joint use admin needs to fill out, which is our make ready construction cost estimate. And this form was configured with the intention to send the details of this form into an email. So as I enter the recipient, a file upload, which is our make ready construction cost estimate document, as well as email subject and body, this will get packaged up and sent to the recipient. So we'll go ahead and fill this out and save the form. Okay, my form is complete. I'll update. We'll save the details, and the status will automatically advance to pending MRC financial authorization. And then this assigns the project back to Bob's Cable, and Bob's Cable can review the project, review the cost estimate, and proceed. I'm going to go ahead and switch my user back to Bob's Cable. And with my project loaded in the sidebar, I can now view the project. I can come to the form and view my make ready cost estimate. It will download the file and I can open it. For the sake of time here, I'm going to go ahead and advance the project to make ready construction costs approved and paid. So as you can see, I'm given several choices here. Again, this is dependent on the workflow that's been configured by Acme Power. All of the forms, statuses, the navigation of the workflow is all configurable. I'm now in a status of MRC payment confirmation. I cannot edit the project at this point. It has been tossed back to Acme Power. So let's go ahead and switch back once more. I'll load my project. And I'm now back into the role of the joint use admin. I know it's a little confusing flipping back and forth to the users, but as you can see, based on the project assignment, there are limitations to what the assigned user or not assigned user can do on the project. So now with the payment confirmation, I can check with my finance department and make sure that all of the payment has come through, everything is good to move forward and advance the project from here to proceed to attach. And this will notify Bob's Cable that yes, everything looks great. You can go ahead and attach. And from there, Bob's Cable will be able to advance the project forward once the construction is complete. All right, let's assume some time has passed. I don't know if Bob is that quick, but the attachment is complete. And so now under Bob's login, what we can do is confirm that the attachment is now complete. All construction is done. And we can hand the project over for just a few more steps with the joint use admin. Load our project back up here. And notice that there is a requirement here. We have to determine if we're going to do any post-construction inspection. So if not, we can say no inspection and pretty much tie up, put a bow on the project and run it to finish. Let's go ahead and select the Mr. Acme at gmail.com for the inspection lead, and we will proceed to send to inspection. Okay, so I have assigned my Acme Power user based on the form field that was selected here. That assignment was made, and I'm now in post-construction inspection. All right, so to complete the next step here, I'm going to come into the Mr. Acme at Gmail. My user here will find our project and load it up in Studio. And now that I'm in post-construction inspection, what I can do, keep my Studio project up, but I'm going to slide Calc over into this window. And I have a blank project here right now, but what I'm going to do is I am actually authorized in Spida Calc under that Acme Power user, and I'm going to download the project so that I can reference it for my post-construction inspection. So here is that project we've been working on. I can see here, right, the benefits of using the integration with Spida Studio and Spida Calc, because I know I'm referencing the latest and greatest calc file. I can see that it was last updated by the MRE lead, which was Nicole's user. And I can open this project now. We'll download from Spida Studio. And now that the project is open, I can complete my inspection. I can view what the recommended design layer was, make sure my construction as built matches. If it doesn't for some reason, I can always clone this recommended design into a new design layer. We could call it as built, make the modifications. And then for this particular project here, we're going to assume that we've completed our inspection. The recommended and as built are identical. So there's no need to do any cloning here or modification of our designs. But what I am going to do is I'm going to save the project back to Spida Studio once more. And in our dialog box, we are able to mark a layer for promotion. And when I check this here, what this means is I can set for each of the 6 poles in my project here, one of the design layers that will be promoted in Spida Studio as my new system of record, right? So when Nicole opened this file originally, an existing design was populated. That existing design is the current system of record in Studio. What I'm going to do now is override that, and my recommended design for each of these poles is going to become my new system of record, meaning that the next time any user within my organization that has the permission to do so creates a project, they will create a project with this recommended design as their new existing. Okay, so I will go ahead, mark layer for promotion. I can also send my project to a final review status, and then we'll update. Okay, I can see the project was successfully updated. It is saving my designs now. And if we go back to Spida Studio and do a quick refresh of our page, we should see that our project is indeed in final review. So one last step here, I'm going to go back to my joint use admin. I'm going to load my project. And I'll complete my final review. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and finish my project here. All right, and then one of the things that ran in the background is if I come here to my stations, and we can choose any one of these here, and I click on the information, I should now have a new active design. It's my recommended design from this project that we created here today. I can view the analysis results. And like I mentioned, the next time that we include PL123 or any of these poles in a project, we will use this recommended design as our system of record. Okay, so this will save time. It will save users from having to go through old project files to find the poles that they're looking for or the latest version of the design that they're looking for to use as a starting point. And it also provides users within your organization to be able to query, which leads us here to kind of the final topic of today's presentation is what can I do with the data that's in here, right? I have this project that I've just completed. I have SpidaCalc data that's now stored in Spida Studio. What can I do with it? Well, I'm going to go over to the search page and we'll take a look here at how we can create some project queries to report on the data within the project or within the projects of Spida Studio. So for example, I've already created one here just to save on some time, but as the joint use admin for Acme Power, let's assume that I want to search all of my Bob's Cable projects, right? I want to know what projects with Bob's Cable do I have in flight? Which ones have been finished? What status are they in? I can create a search query. And so my search query is basically searching on a form name and a form field with a specific value. Okay. And again, this is just based on the configurations within this particular environment and workflow. And I'm going to include projects that are in flight, but also in finished. And so what I can do with this query is I can get a general count. I have 10 projects that meet this search criteria. I can tag this, which is going to take me over to the manager page and load all 10 projects in my sidebar. Or I can export this as a CSV so that I can manage the data in any way that I choose from there. But let's simply just click on tag. We'll look in the detail view, and this is a summary of my query. Right? And from there, you can sort of manage your projects. You can break these queries down even further. If you had a project query that returned 500 results, for example, you might want to break that down into additional criteria so that you could manage the work. The benefit of having all of your projects and all of the important details within each project, form details, file attachments, any communications through remarks, is that it's all in one place. I can go back to this application 2 years from now and I can view the information. I know exactly where to go. I can create queries based on certain criteria to pull up old projects. And those even outside of Acme Power, such as Bob's Cable, through various permissioning levers that we have in Spida Studio. You can also grant attachers permission as well. All right, so let me go back real quick here to the search page. And here I just wanted to point out before we move on from project searches is that the criteria that can be used is pretty extensive, right? So we can query on project creator company. We can query on project names, so project names that contain a certain value, for example. If you have a particular attacher and they reference their projects, their naming conventions in a certain manner or from a certain year, you could query on those values. Any form data can be queried on. Project members, so if you want to query all projects that have a certain assignee, you can certainly do that. We can query projects that have various status ages. Maybe you want to know ones that have been sitting for longer than 6 weeks, for example. You can query by status name and workflow name, the date that they were created, and each of these, I'll use this one as an example, have additional filters that you can use. So not only can we search on specific dates, but we can search before, after, or in between. So there's a lot of granular detail that can be created from these queries and pulled into, like I said, a project tag to be worked on or into a project CSV. All right, we have one final item to showcase here today in our coffee corner, and that is in regards to the SpidaCalc data that we have stored and saved in Spida Studio. We showed earlier how active designs can be pulled in as a system of record or starting point into new SpidaCalc files. We were able to see how the data from the SpidaCalc project got pulled into Spida Studio. But there is one other thing we wanted to share, and that's in our asset search. I'm going to go ahead and say OK here. And we can query our SpidaCalc data through this asset search here. And I've created one. Again, it's based on Bob's Cable attachments. But if I edit this, you'll see that I'm querying our SpidaCalc data. That's our SpidaDB active service here. And I want to find all assets where the wire owner equals Bob's Cable. And what I wanted to show here is that just like with the project queries, there is an extensive list of data. These are all attributes here that are contained within your SpidaCalc data that can be queried on. So I can scroll through this list here. It is rather extensive. Anything from attachment heights of each of the components to analysis results to attachment owner types to you name it. It's all in here. So scroll through to the bottom, you can see some of those here at the end. But essentially, querying this data will return a result if it finds any matches, and I can, same thing, do a count. I have 11 assets where Bob's Cable has a wire attachment. All right, so I'll go ahead and run this search here. It loads in my sidebar. I have 11 stations or 11 poles. I can visualize on the map here where those poles are. And then if I go into the detail view, I get a list of those poles. But if I go into the table view, I can see even more detail. I can see the primary tags, I can see the latitude and longitude, and this asset count here is going to refer to the data points that are actually in this asset rows where I can get a little bit more information, right? I can see the type of pole species and the length and the class. I can also click on any of these analysis results, right? So this can help me as I go through and maybe want to evaluate just various aspects of my system. Now we'll take this one step further here, and maybe we want to do some hardening efforts, or we want to get just a different set of criteria for the initiative that is driving some of this query. Oops, let me go to my asset search here. And let's add another level, right? We want to know all of Bob's Cable wires, but we also want to find where our analysis result is greater than, let's just say 90%. Okay, so we want to flag all poles above 90% that have a Bob's cable attachment. And again, this query is limitless. But just as an example, do a quick count here. And there's 2 assets, right? So I could run this search. Here are those 2 poles here in blue. And if I needed to include these 2 poles in some Spida Studio project, right, based on my workflows that I have available to me, I could definitely do that. I could go in and I could create a project if I needed to inspect these poles. I could run it through a workflow that facilitates pole inspection. Okay, so once the data is in here, it becomes extremely valuable and you can leverage it in many different ways.
All right, and that concludes our presentation here for today. Thank you all again for hanging in there with us to the end. I know we shared a lot of information and showed a lot of the functionality between Spida Studio and Spida Calc. Just want to remind you all, I don't see any questions currently, but there is a Q&A box within the On24 platform here. Feel free to type in a question that you may have. I know we are very close here to the end of our hour, but we will certainly reach out to you directly if we don't get to address your question live here on today's Coffee Corner. So again, feel free to type that in the Q&A box. We do want to display before everybody logs out a couple poll questions. Again, today we got to cover a few of our solutions that we offer within the Spida brand, but we want to hear from you as well. So I'm going to push a poll here, and you should see that pop up on your screen in just a moment. We'd love to hear from you about what you would like to see in future coffee corners. So there are a couple suggestions here. If the suggestions don't necessarily fit topics that you are interested in, feel free to leave it blank. There is a free text field that will be on the next poll. So again, we would love your feedback. We want to make sure that these coffee corners are valuable to all of our users. Give everyone a moment here just to fill out this first poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward to this next poll then again, and similar question, but if one of the topics on the last poll did not pertain to any of the topics you may be interested in seeing in a coffee corner, let us know your thoughts. This is just a free text field on this poll that is now getting pushed out to everyone to provide some feedback. We will be sending out communications here over the next few weeks of our next scheduled coffee corner. We're planning to have a few more before the end of 2025. And again, we truly appreciate everybody's attendance here today and taking time out of your day to learn a little bit more about Spida Studio and Spida Calc and the integration capabilities between each. So feel free to fill out those polls, submit any questions that you have in the Q&A box. If you don't get your questions in today, we're happy to respond in support tickets or email if that's easier. But again, thank you all for joining us here today. We'll leave this poll open for another minute or so. Thank you, everybody.